Hello, my name is Dr. Bert Jordan, and I am beginning a YouTube channel and broadcast on reviewing Bibles, commentaries, study helps, all that's been kind of a help to me over my 50 years in ministry. I began in ministry nearly 51 years ago, and I have accumulated quite a library over that period of time, in spite of the digital age and what have you. And some of these I would like to share with you. Now, there are a lot of review channels on YouTube and regular podcast channel through Apple as well. However, I would like to try to introduce my unique perspective, or at least my ideas, on what I believe a young minister or a young Christian worker or a young teacher or a professor or what have you might find very useful. I found these useful in my life. I can't do all of them in one video. I am going to at least attempt one or two today. The first book I actually really ever studied. But to give you some background of who I am, I was called to the ministry in 1969. I began studying in 1970 and went to my first church in 1972. And I still remember that church today because of how patient and and understanding that they were. And I began going to college and seminary, kind of cutting it up into halves in a way. I did have a full-time job, but as I had this pastorate, I still felt the need and felt God's calling in my life to pastor and to teach. It took me a while to understand that, well, pastor and teaching is pretty well the same thing, and the Bible seems to follow that as well in Ephesians 4, where it mentions pastors and preachers were given as gifts to the church. So, from that perspective, I began going to seminary externally, what they call the external program today. We would call it the online program in our age today, here in the 21st century. But this was a correspondence type program. The seminary happened to be in the town where I was at, fortunately, and many times I would just deliver my studies and my work to them. I have completed a doctorate degree in theology. I also have an honorary degree in theological studies and historical literature. And I guess that pretty well says why my love for books and other things over the years have been so intense. In my day, there was no digital age where you could accumulate a great deal of information and books and things through apps such as Logos, Olive Tree Bible app. There is also a free app out there, eSword, by Rick Myers, who has really been useful in creating something new. Now, most of his works are some of the works I'm even going to review for you, so they will be also available digitally as well. However, in my day, it was a book, it was a library that you accumulated. I learned very soon that some things were probably I wasn't ready for, but the circumstances called for the necessity to go ahead and buy and have them on hand. Now, one of the first books that I ever did study was a book that I just happened to be in Effie Sutton bookstore, which has been years ago in Jacksonville, Florida. It was right across the street from First Baptist Church. And she had quite a supply of books. One book she had mentioned to me was any of the H.A. Ironside books, and I if you hold to a dispensational viewpoint, or even if you don't. Many of his works are very practical, they're very simple, and they are very illuminating as well as edification. But one of the first books she showed me, and when she showed it to me, I wasn't really all that interested, but it's called Explore the Book by J. Sidlow Baxter. This book actually changed and set me on the right track to Bible study as far as I am concerned. This is my third copy of this book. The other two were pretty heavily done, and the second one, even though not quite done yet, I gave it to someone who was useful and could use it. And it is still available today in this form, and it is also available in digital form as well. When I first asked one of my seminary professors what I could do to learn the Bible better, and to this day I never forget what he says. In fact, it's advice I give to anyone. If you want to learn more about the Bible, read it. That is all this man told me. I said, well, can you tell me anything? He says, no, read it. And then he challenged me to this. He says, have you read the Bible all the way through entirely? Of course, I had to admit I did not. And he said, well, once you do that, then start maybe considering a library, or maybe start considering other books to look at. So I began reading the Bible quite intensely, probably more than I should have. I should have bit it off in smaller chunks, but I really wanted to take his challenge and to get it done. So I did, and he said, good. He says, I said, well, what other books and things will I need? And he said, read it again. And that was a little bit discouraging, but that's okay. Well, when I got done the second time through, he said, you can start looking at books on your own. And one of the books that he actually showed me or told me about was Explore the Book by J. Sidlow Baxter. Now, I wondered what that was about. And so then I started looking at the book, because Miss Sutton had actually shown me this book. It was a little beyond my price reach, so I had to kind of wait on it, but she still let me look at it and go through it and what have you. Well, once I was able to purchase it, I bought it home and I began going through it. Now, I can understand why many people say that you should just read the Bible first. So, and once I picked up this book, and knowing I had read the Bible through and I was going to go through it in this book, I learned much more from that experience. Now, J. Sidlow Baxter was a teacher in Bible College at London, Spurgeon's Bible School at one time, that he taught New Testament, Old Testament survey, and this was also one of his books that he did. Now, he begins his book very carefully. He's talking about his method. He's talking about various ways of approaching things, and he also looks at quite a few other things as well. However, in his introduction that he gives, or rather his foreword, I believe I can get it up here where you can see it. In his foreword, he talks about various Bible studies that he has done and the Thursday evening Bible class he had that actually came to this. And he talks about this Bible course was Bible lectures in Charlotte Chapel in Edinburgh. And he goes down quite a bit and says, about some authors. I can never be too grateful to dear old and to many old-fashioned John Kitto, John Urquhart, A.T. Pearson, Sir Robert Anderson, and G. Campbell Morgan, and others of the same evangelical tradition. To them all, and to that incomparable composite work, the pulpit commentary, I, I here acknowledge my repeated indebtedness and pay my tribute to them all. This makes it very interesting how he does that. Then he starts out with a little something from actually Sir Walter Scott, and it's called the Bible. And on this, he talks about within this wondrous volume lies the mystery of mysteries. Happiest day of human race, to whom their God has given grace. To read, to fear, to hope, to pray, to lift the latch, to find the way. And better had they never been born, who read to doubt, or read to scorn. And as he begins his book, in his introduction, he basically says that no man's education is complete if he does not know the Bible. No Christian minister is really qualified for the ministry of the Christian church without a thorough study of the Bible. No Christian worker can be fully effective without a ready knowledge of the Bible. No Christian believer can live the Christian life to the full without an adequate grasp of the Bible. His whole purpose in this book is to give us a grounding into the Scriptures. He begins, first of all, with looking at the Bible as a whole. He sees the Old Testament, the New Testament, but where you, and I need to get there, but where you go through some of the actual books that he does, starting with Genesis, he basically says this: for this first study, read through the whole book of Genesis through once or twice. So he kind of picks up the same situation that others have picked up along the way. And as he gets to certain things, he gets the structure laid down. He does basically certain things, and then he comes back and he gives us and I'm hoping you can see some of this. Again, I am kind of new at this, so I don't know, but you can kind of see how he lays the book of Genesis out. This was, and he goes through each and every book that way. Once you digested this book, I just recently had a young man in our church who wants to learn more, and I told him to secure a copy of this book, and we meet every so often and talk about his studies in this book. He is actually overwhelmed with this book, and I can understand why he would be so. There are a lot of survey books out there. There are a lot of, I think about Wiersbe's B series, and which I have used extensively throughout my ministry. But there are many Bible surveys, Bible outlines that you can go through. There was a very popular thing in the 80s, Through the Bible in 1 year. I did that a couple of times myself. That was very challenging, to say the least, and I still wonder what was grasped, being we were going through that so quickly. Not critical of the program or the study, but just it does go through it pretty quickly if anyone's ever had experience with that. But J. Sidlow Baxter takes you through and explore the book. I went through this book and studied it, reading it again, because once you've done it, you have read through the Bible at least once, and possibly once and a half or two. So that's what also makes it unique in the way it challenges you to just understand the Scriptures. One of the biggest dangers you can ever come across is you begin depending upon the helps instead of the helper. The Holy Spirit is our helper. He will guide us into all truth, but he does that through the Scriptures, and then anything that may be additional to that or helpful to that, he then can teach from there as well. As you can see, I kind of believe that because, as you can see behind me, some of my library is here. Um, by the way, if you've ever had a study or the privilege of having one at your home, which my wife has provided for me, um, you really don't know what you're missing. I know this can't be the thing for everyone, but if it's ever possible that you can have your own private area, and I can say this for sure, church studies are not exactly the most private place in the world, but you should take advantage of that if you can. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, we're in a digital age, Dr. Burt, and books take up room, space, they're bulky, they're big, all kinds of things you can hear. I agree. I understand that because I use the digital myself. However, and it is quite convenient to use those once you learn to use them. Now, always remember there is a learning curve, especially to the Logos Bible program. Once that learning curve is hurdled, though, it is a very helpful process as you can have 10, 15 books open at a time, and they're not even on your desk or on your laptop, and it is convenient from that end. However, and this would probably only apply to bibliophiles such as I am. We have to be careful how we say that nowadays, but that means lover of books and others. So, and I looked at just the books and the digital, and I find that I can blend both of them when it is very convenient to have the digital versions to be able to go when you're sitting in a doctor's office waiting, or you're waiting for one of the kids to pick them up from school, or anytime you have a waiting or a lull period, or you have a lunch break and you get through with your lunch and there's 15 minutes left, the digital versions then come in so handy and so convenient, and you're not having to carry along a large book or any of that. You can in fact carry. One of the things that drew me into the digital world was carry your library with you. I thought that was one way to capture me, and it did. I use Logos and I use Olive Tree software and the free version of eSword that I have mentioned to you before. You can go online and get that. You can and Explore the Book is also available on Kindle. It is available on Apple Books, so that book is still available as well in digital. Well, this was my first introduction to that, to reviewing a Bible book or Bible. I, again, am just beginning this. It is far from perfect, but I intend eventually to get it as close to perfect as I can. Thank you for listening today, and I will see you the next broadcast that I have.